must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for joining us. We are a bit late today, about 19 minutes past 3 p.m. here in Nairobi. I trust that you're well. A very good evening, good morning, depending on which part of the world you are tuned in today. We have a lot to talk about. Of course, this is Diaspora Dispatches, where we get to look at the news making headlines across the continent of Africa. And my name is Miriam Ogutu. We start with Mozambique. And Mozambique has formally asked the European Union for support to battle Islamist militants in its gas-rich northern province of Cabo Delgado. It has requested support in logistics and specialized training for its soldiers. The Southern African nation has been fighting the insurgents for 3 years with little success. At least 1,500 people have been killed so far, and an estimated a quarter million people have fled from their homes. The government has lost control of 3 coastal districts. Foreign Affairs Minister Veronica Makamo has written to Brussels requesting the support after the EU expressed its willingness to assist. In the letter, Ms. Makamo also asked for assistance in development programs such as a way of reducing the vulnerability of the locals, mainly young people, to the lure of joining the insurgents. And then we go to Libya, and a court, matters relating to Libya but happening in France, because a court in France has rejected a request by the former President Nicolas Sarkozy to dismiss an investigation of allegations that he received bribes from Libya to finance his election campaign in 2007. The ruling by the Court of Appeal in Paris means that Mr. Sarkozy and several of his associates are now likely to have to stand trial over the claims that they benefited from millions of dollars from Libya's late leader Muammar Gaddafi. However, the accused can still appeal to the highest French criminal court. And then we cross over to Gambia, and Gambia's opposition leader has blamed the government for the rejection of a draft constitution that would have limited presidential terms. Parliament rejected the draft constitution on Tuesday. A clause that prevented President Adama Barrow from resetting the clock to make him eligible for 2 more terms appeared to have been the biggest sticking point. The United Democratic Party leader Osanu Darboe said the rejection of the draft was not a good sign of democracy. The next general elections are scheduled for next year. And then we go to Ghana, and Ghana's nurses and midwives will resumed work today after calling off their indefinite strike. The National Labour Commission secured a court order to enforce an earlier court injunction meant to end the strike and compel the health workers to continue negotiations with the government. The nurses and midwives are demanding better terms of service, including rent and transport allowances. And then we head over to Ivory Coast, and the Ivorian government plans to release the associates of opposition leader Guillaume Soro. A spokesperson has been quoted by Reuters news agency as saying government spokesperson Sidi Temoke Toure did not state the number of people to be freed, but said some may still face prosecution. Those in detention include Mr. Soro's relatives and politicians. Mr. Soro was accused of plotting a coup against President Alassane Ouattara. He is currently in exile in France. The release of his allies is seen as an attempt to calm rising tensions in the country ahead of next month's election. And President Alassane Ouattara's bid for a 3rd term has led to mass protests in the country. The barring of Mr. Soro from vying in the election because of a previous conviction has also added more tension. And then we go to Mali, and West African leaders have indicated they might lift the sanctions they have imposed on Mali following last month's coup. The envoy, then a former Nigerian president, Goodluck Jonathan, said on his arrival in Mali that the military officers who overthrew who overthrew President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, who were acceding to international calls for a transition to civilian rule. His comments suggest that West African Regional Bloc ECOWAS could accept the appointment of a former Defense Minister Ba Ndou as interim president, with the coup leader Colonel Assimi Goïta as vice president. Imports to landlocked Mali have slumped since the imposition of a trade embargo. And we come back to East Africa, this time to Tanzania, and Fatma Karume, one of Tanzania's top lawyers, has said she's been struck off from the role of advocate, a decision that bans her from practicing law in the mainland. Ms. Karume, popularly known as Shangazi, a Swahili word for an aunt, has been a vocal critic of President John Magufuli. She shared news of her disbarment on Twitter. She told the BBC in a brief interview that she has been permanently disbarred from the Advocates Committee because she took Mr. Magufuli to court for breaching the constitution. The president, she said, had appointed an attorney general who did not fulfill the constitutionally stipulated requirements for the post. The committee also told her that some tweets she had posted breached professional ethics. And then we head over to Algeria, and a court in Algeria has sentenced 4 people of a billionaire family a lengthy prison sentences in a high-profile corruption case linked to the era of former President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. 3 brothers in the Koninev family, received sentences from 12 to 16 years in jail, while their sister, who has fled abroad, was sentenced to 20 years in absentia. And then we go to Rwanda, where a Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, postponed in April because of the coronavirus pandemic, will now be held in June next year in Rwanda's capital, Kigali. The biannual meeting is the Commonwealth's highest consultative and policy-making gathering. It will be held in the week of 21st June 2021. The Commonwealth Secretary said member countries have agreed on the new date. I know you're wondering how Rwanda is part of Commonwealth, and yet it was not colonized by the British but Rwanda applied and asked to become member of Commonwealth a few years ago, and it was allowed to be a member of the Commonwealth. And then we move to the DR Congo, and former rebels who once commanded armed political groups in the blood-stained Ituri province in the Democratic Republic of Congo and were recently released from prison in January are part of an army-escorted peace envoy to the same region sent by President Felix Tshisekedi. They assigned the challenge of negotiating with the Corporation for the Development of Congo, a political military sect blamed for the massacre of hundreds of civilians in the province. Most of the victims have been herders and traders from their traditional rivals, the Hima, according to a United Nations report that says a possible crime against humanity has been committed. And then we come to Somalia, where a political newcomer, Mohamed Hussein Roble, became Somalia's prime minister on Wednesday after getting unanimous approval from lawmakers. Somali President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed was in attendance when all 215 members of parliament cast their votes in favor of his appointee. Roble is promising to create an effective government that addresses some of the key issues facing the country, including having fair presidential and parliamentary elections. And then we go to South Sudan, and President Salva Kiir has added his voice to the demand by the African Union for 2 permanent seats at the United Nations Security Council. Wait, what? African Union had demanded for 2 permanent seats. Okay. Oh no, African Union had demanded for 1. And President Salva Kiir is adding to his voice and thinks Africa needs a seat at the permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council. So Britain, China, France, Russia, and of course the United States, we know, are considered as permanent members there at the United Nations Security Council. No African country enjoys that privilege apart from Kenya, Tunisia, and Niger, and apart from Kenya, Tunisia, and Niger are other African representatives. Of course, the non-permanent, who cannot veto any resolution imposed by the permanent members. In his first official address to the United Nations General Assembly in several years, President Salva Kiir used the opportunity to echo the calls for permanent representations of Africa at the United Nations Security Council. And this is what President Salva Kiir said from Juba during the virtual event on Monday. He said, 75 years since the founding of the United Nations, the geopolitical realities in the world have changed, and the United Nations Security Council remains the same. How profound. Look at President Salva Kiir there. I think whatever he said here makes a lot of sense, and I think echoes a lot of sentiments from Africans across this continent, because while these members were selecting themselves and deciding, okay, you know what, we are the permanent members, I'm sure there were factors at that time that, perhaps gave them that favor. But things have changed, and the geopolitical realities in the world have changed, the political reality and the powerhouse that is Africa. Right now, all faces, all roads leads to this continent, because there's something we have here. We are no longer, a people that can be ignored when it comes to the geopolitical dynamics in the world. And so Africa has a very important place, in the global, map there. So it is time that we had a voice at the United Nations Security Council. So President Salva Kiir there, I think what he said here is quite profound, about the geopolitical realities in the world having changed, and the United Nations Security Council still remaining the same. So in other words, the setup of the United Nations Security Council is not in line with the reality on the ground right now, which is Africa has come of age and deserves and must have a seat at the United Nations Security Council. I don't know what was the response there, and the rest of the permanent members. I think, the late president of Libya, Muammar Gaddafi, was one of the leaders in the continent who insisted on having a United Nations permanent, membership there for Africa, and also the late Robert Mugabe and a few African leaders. I don't know if it will come a point where that will be echoed, or that will be heeded, or that call would even be considered there at the United Nations. All right, we stay with South Sudan, but this time on matters to do with, Sudan. And President Salva Kiir has sent out invitation letters to various heads of state to attend the final signing ceremony of the Sudanese peace agreement. On Tuesday, President Salva Kiir invited his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to participate in the event. South Sudan Deputy Minister of Defense Malek Ruben, who is also a member of the mediation team, said preparations for the signing ceremony are at the advanced stage. In August, the Sudanese transitional government and armed opposition groups signed the initial peace deal in Juba. The peace deal addressed several issues of wealth sharing, power sharing, political and national issues, security arrangements, land ownership, and pastoralist farmer dispute. Others are justice, equality, reconciliation, and compensation in Darfur region, Southern Kordofan, and Nuba Mountain. Outside of the Southern Kordofan issue and Nuba Mountain issue and equality, all of these other issues that South Sudan has been trying to help solve for Sudan. They plague South Sudan itself. And it's just wonderful that South Sudan, under the leadership of President Salva Kiir, have been able to mediate what seems like a successful peace deal there on behalf of the government of South Sudan and the rebel groups there in Sudan. And now they're coming together. He's even invited President of Egypt, El Fattah el-Sisi, there to come and witness this wonderful event and participate in this event, which I think is quite wonderful. What I don't understand is that vigor, that will, that passion that South Sudan President Salva Kiir has to solve the problems of Sudan. Why he lacks that when it comes to his own problems back in South Sudan. I think that is the point that I've never fully, grasped. He's done very well in leading for mediation, in finding a solution to Sudan. But the problems that plague South Sudan are not too different, are not too far apart. They're quite similar in terms of the rebel groups that we see in South Sudan, in terms of these things, justice, equality, reconciliation, and compensation. All of these things, that they're saying that they have helped us, Sudan do that, which I think is fantastic. It's fantastic if we can get a solution for Sudan. I think it's good and should be lauded. But President Salva Kiir, these same problems, you've not been able to solve them in your own country there in South Sudan. They are quite similar. Talk about inequality, talk about justice, talk about reconciliation, talk about armed opposition groups. Even the government itself there in South Sudan has its own militia group. That is what, we learn here. And so I've not understood how. I guess what they say in our local language here in Kiswahili, our national language, they say mganga hajigangi, meaning a witch doctor cannot really treat themselves, or rather something of the sort. I don't know. But from where I sit, I think charity always should begin at home. If you're able to do that, President Salva Kiir, which if you're just good, I'm not playing your role in the mediation process there in Sudan. I think it's wonderful. But sir, can we now translate that same will, that same passion to your country, South Sudan, and address the issues as you have been able to address here during this mediation process, and remove the hardlining positions, remove the ego, remove the self-interest, and try to see what is best for the people of South Sudan, and perhaps, lead in the process of finding a lasting solution in South Sudan. That's all I'm saying. Whatever you're doing for Sudan is wonderful, but I think even the people of South Sudan would like to see the same issues here that you've been helping solve for Sudan, also the same in their own country. I think the people of South Sudan will appreciate that. I don't know. Bunek Maxon, you're saying Africans are now matured enough for the permanent seat at the United Nations Security. Absolutely. And I think whatever our President Salva Kiir there of South Sudan said, I think it's really quite profound, because the reality then, when they were founding the United Nations, which was the League of Nations, I think when it was first founded, 75 years ago, was perhaps different, and things have changed. The dynamics are different right now. And so, Africa, we do have a say, because we do matter. A whole continent with so many people, you cannot just purport to that they can't have a voice in this very important body across the world. And when we have these representatives, like Kenya as a representative there, the United Nations as a non-permanent member, but still, that is not enough, because anything that any of these other countries propose, it can easily be vetoed. So it really doesn't matter. So we just go there to rubber stamp everything else that the rest of the countries that are perceived to matter really want to push there in terms of the agenda and everything. So I think that is something that they should consider. And then we go to Cameroon, where journalists arrested in Yaoundé and Douala on September 22nd during the Cameroon Renaissance Movement's protest to oust current President Paul Biya have all been released, according to a report. 3 who are still held by security forces, including Tar Jarvis Mai and his cameraman Christian Debon of My Media Prime in Douala, and Lidove Gio of La Nouvelle Expression in Yaoundé, were released on Wednesday, September 23rd in the evening. Tar Jarvis and his cameraman were picked up by forces of law and order in Douala while covering the demonstrations in the part of the country. And then we end with some news from Biafra. And the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, on Wednesday advised his members to sit at home. On October 1st, 2020, Nigeria will be celebrating its independence. Now led by the IPOB leader, of course, the organization urged its followers across the globe to observe a sit at home in Biafra land and, where permissible, in the diaspora. In a statement by the media and publicity, Secretary Emma Powerful, IPOB, said its members would join its Yoruba counterparts agitating for Oduduwa Republic in public protest to mark the day. The pro-Biafran group stressed that a complete and total lockdown of Biafra land and other terror-ravaged areas of the Middle Belt come October 1st, 2020 was sacrosanct, irreversible, and non-negotiable. So you're being told not to go out on that day, and that is according to Nnamdi Kanu there. So thank you so much for watching and for joining. Of course, we looked at, a number of stories here and news-making headlines across Africa this afternoon. And I think one of the things that really perhaps caught a lot of my attention this afternoon is Mozambique formally asking for the European Union for support to battle Islamist militants in its gas-rich northern province of Cabo Delgado. And I think this is a conversation we've had over and over over again here. Last week we had, and we saw, we were just trying to look at who is behind some of these, attacks, who is funding these militant groups, what are their roots, what do they stand for, what do they stand to achieve, who are they fighting on their behalf. We just looked at all of that, and who are the possible funders, And now that Mozambique, I saw their President Filipe Nyusi coming out and saying, we are overwhelmed. We are not able to handle this, insurgency anymore. And so we are asking for help. Remember, the Al-Shabaab there in Mozambique a couple of weeks ago had sent out a message and said, even the neighboring countries, especially South Africa, should not even dare, try to come in with troops and help the Mozambican government. So a lot of the neighbors, all the neighbors have stayed away, and we've not seen, AU try to really find a solution or send a contingent of peacekeepers or fighters or there in Mozambique. So it has been just getting worse and worse, and we've seen a lot of people being displaced, and of course the number of people who are being killed in that area are just continuing on a daily. And so Mozambique's president comes out and said, I think we are unable to handle this problem. So now we are formally asking for the European Union to come and help us, deal with this insurgency in this country. And the minute I heard that, I thought to myself, owing, to the proxy wars, owing perhaps to the interest. And, we know particularly this province of Cabo Delgado that is quite rich in gas, in gas and all that, natural minerals there. I don't know if President Filipe Nyusi even understands perhaps the ramification, because now if you have, officially invited them to your country, they will come, and perhaps that is what a lot of them have been wanting and have been looking for. I don't know if President Filipe Nyusi, you're solving a problem, or you're just going to compound the problem and just make it more bigger than you'll be able to handle. Because when they're coming to help, when these European countries are coming to help, don't think they'll just come to help because they love you and they want a peaceful Mozambique. I think they'll come in, and on the other side, they'll have a caveat. We're coming in, and also this is what we want from you. We're coming in, but can we have also a share of that oil? Can we have a share of that gas? Can we be, can our company, one company from our country, allowed to do this and that? So they're not just coming in. So I think President Filipe Nyusi must have opened a floodgate of other things without even knowing, but I know that he is, the country is quite overwhelmed and is unable to address the issue of insecurity that has been brought about by this extremist group. And right now, as we speak, they have taken over 3 coastal towns there in Mozambique. I don't know how it even gets to that level. What is happening with the government? What is wrong with the intelligence of Mozambique? Why could they not spot this as a problem, Arielon? I speak like that because we've had nearly a similar problem here in Kenya, where we also have Al-Shabaab. And also the group in Mozambique is called Al-Shabaab. And we've seen initially when they started being very active in the country, we were being caught off guard. They're either bombing a mall somewhere, or they're killing people in a bus somewhere, or they're just kidnapping and all of that. Maybe that some insecurity of that level, perhaps it's happening, but not in such a huge magnitude. And we've not seen anything in the news of late about events related to Al-Shabaab. Maybe they're planning or whatever they're doing, but a lot of times the news that you see coming out lately is that the police or the intelligence in the country have been able to intercept a plan before they were able to cause the damage that they were planning to do in the country. So the government of Kenya was forced to step up, especially in its intelligence, and so we are able to sort of nip the problem before it blew out of proportion. They're just blowing us up. You could go to a mall and you want to leave as quick as you can, because you don't know, Al-Shabaab could come in there, and just hold the whole place a hostage. So it became to a place where it was very scary, even just walking in public places here in Nairobi. But our security agents, had to up their game and how to outwit them. They had to really, go deeper and find out how can we able to stop some of these things before they happen. How can we be how can we ensure that Kenyans are safe, that you can go to a mall, you can go and walk in the streets, go to a public place or whatever, and just feel safe, because it had gotten to a level where, you'd rather just sit in your house because you just didn't know. You could be sitting on traffic, and there is sometimes our traffic is just bad here in Nairobi, and then somebody will just decide to shoot. People are already starting to think, in those lines because of the scariness that came in that position. But the government, did something about it, and we've seen sort of the security has been brought, under control. A few times they might get us out of, without us knowing, but it's not happening as often as, a couple of years ago. So what I've been wondering is for, Mozambique, for the Al-Shabaab there in Mozambique to now have captured 3 towns, where was the intelligence of Mozambique? That's number one. What is the army doing? What you see in videos, like that video that was making headlines a couple of days ago, a woman naked being beaten by the army in Mozambique, and then after they beat her, they shot her, dead. Like, what are you doing? And yet the people you're supposed to be killing and you're supposed to be going after, Al-Shabaab, has taken over a whole 3 towns there in Mozambique. So I think there's more to what we are hearing from Mozambique. Something is not right. And President Filipe Nyusi, for you to come out and now formally invite European Union, I don't know if you're inviting help, or I don't know if you're inviting a more compounded problem. Wait until they come into Mozambique. Wait until they start their proxy wars in Mozambique, as we see in Libya. When even Italy and France are bickering against each other there, because they're just speaking out of their own interest and how they feel that is threatened there in Libya, with the presence of the chaos and the presence of course, the warring factors there in Libya. So I don't know, when I heard this news, President Filipe saying, you know what, we are overwhelmed and we need more help from the European Union, I said, okay, maybe you'd have started with the African Union. Perhaps, perhaps you should have started with African, like how do you just surpass African Union and go straight to European Union? Why do we need African Union then? If African Union cannot handle such matters, and President Filipe Nyusi feels so overwhelmed that he needs help, but he feels he cannot get it, one, from SADC members, Mozambique is a SADC member, and then 2, from African Union. Why? Then why do we have these bodies? Why haven't these countries there tried to find a solution? We see Somalia there. The East African nations, the IGAD nations are in Somalia, trying to help out Somalia. Of course, Somalia now is feeling they've overstayed their visit and wants them to leave, but they've been there. They responded accordingly because Somalia's insecurity was becoming a threat to the rest of us in the region. So they had to respond. So I wonder what, SADC especially is doing, and also African Union, that now would force President Filipe Nyusi to go all the way to the European Union and ask them to come and help. Unless, President Filipe Nyusi, you know what you're doing, sir. Yeah, because I don't think inviting the European Union there in Mozambique, I don't know if that will be a solution. Look at Mali. Look at how many troops even France have in Mali that have been helping there with the insurgency. And look at how the insurgency has gone up that forced Malians to go out and protest that finally removed President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta. Look at the Sahel region. They have foreign troops there, who've been helping. But Boko Haram and other insurgents and other groups, extremist groups have increased. So I don't know if inviting European Union countries, if that is even a good solution there for Mozambique. But of course, I think tomorrow when we shall be having this conversation there in the morning, I'll like to hear what Dr. Matanga will have to say about this, because I'm sure this is something that will interest him. All right, thank you so much. That is all I had time for today. This has been Diaspora Dispatches. My name is Mira Mugutu. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.
must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.